Okay, so this is the last session, and it's been a wonderful group of interaction and good questions, and really trying to nut into the detail of these safe system assessments, which has been wonderful. So thank you for the great input. This session, as I mentioned, we've got time allocated for discussing your safe system assessments, delving into that if there are more questions, and I'm sure others will learn from those questions. So please do think of those and keep them coming. If we don't use more of that time for answering that, we'll just finish it a little bit early and give you time to really get stuck into that safe system assessment that you're currently doing. And maybe some of you need to get started on it. It's been put on the back burner for some other urgent work, but we may have time at the end of the session to delve into, to give you time to do that and finish off quizzes and things. So in order to successfully complete this course, you're going to need to have completed all those quizzes. So the module quizzes, and got more than 80% on them. And you're also going to need to have finished that assignment from module 2, where you looked at the intersection you chose and you categorized, and get it more than 80% on that. And you're going to have to have finished and successfully completed this safe system assessment. Then you just have to fill out a feedback form, and hey presto, you'll get your certificate. Kathy will show you that in Moodle at the end of this session, or sorry, in the learning management system. I called it Moodle. That's the back-end hosting provider, but the learning management system. And she'll show you just how to finish the last things and get your certificate. Yeah, so I will give you some time at the end to do that, unless we've got good questions coming in that we can clarify the assessment process and the scoring and those sorts of things. But today, there's two things I really want to achieve out of today's session. One is just to talk to you about the process of safe system assessments in Australia, and in New Zealand does pretty much the same. So in Australia and New Zealand, and how they play out in infrastructure projects, and the process and the policy guidance, the policies that sit from different road authorities for major projects or other projects. So I'll talk to you a bit about that. And then I just want to cover off very briefly at the end a big cross-section of road environments, road stereotypes, and what aligns highly with safe system principles and what's not so good, in order to ensure that when you go out of here with a certificate and you are a safe system assessor and you're asked to do assessments of any road environment, any area that's interacting with the road network, you've got a few things in mind on what particulars of that stereotype, road stereotype or cross-section or road environment would align highly with safe system principles. And yeah, keep your questions coming in and your comments, and we'll tick on through. Of course, we're recording it, so you can watch it again later if you want at any point. Okay, so we want to understand the benefits of safe system assessments. So this is part of the sort of policy discussion, but I mean, why are we adding a new process, another process to already process heavy things like infrastructure development and planning and the like? So are they adding value? What's the benefit of them? What's the process to follow within an infrastructure project? And what's the difference between a safe system assessment and a road safety audit? What are some of the details around that? And Kathy, I might get you to dig out that that little comparison sheet that we recently published, and we'll show that, and we'll put that into the learning management system so people have that available. Okay, so there was an independent evaluation of safe system assessments undertaken, led by Blair Turner. And this is sort of one of the key outputs or outcomes of the independent evaluation of the effectiveness. And I'll explain this, and I'm going to spend a bit of time on this chart because it tells quite a story. Okay, so on the side, well, first thing we've got here is predicted crashes over a 20-year period going forward. And these are predicted. So I was using a crash prediction model. It was ANRAM with extra stuff. So that was used to predict how many people will be killed or seriously injured into the future for the next 20 years under different scenarios. So on the y-axis here, we've got fatal serious injury crash numbers. And here we have four scenarios here. So we've got no project. So what this is saying is for the 35 projects that were looked at, and these were big, massive projects. We had big town bypasses. We had $100, $200 million duplication projects, huge freeway upgrade, big, many hundreds of $1 million projects. So big stuff. If these projects did not happen, okay, so no upgrades at all, how many people would be killed or seriously injured in these areas? Or if there's a town bypass, the bypass of the town never happens. Traffic continues to go through the town. So that's the no project scenario. Then what happened was every one of them had designs produced, and the designs were pretty much the reference design. So reference stage design. So fairly much at a fairly functional level of design, not in detailed design, but enough to really know what's sort of going on and what should work. Okay, so that's the original design scenario. Then they had safe system assessments done, and they recommended alterations. And the evaluation team looked at those recommendations that the safe system assessment team and took the ones that were going to provide the highest value and scored and looked at those and put that into a scenario, said, okay, this project now gets changed to include all of this. How does that look? And then this final one was that the safe system assessment was handed over to the project team, and they said, yep, okay, we can do this one, we can't do these three for these reasons, and we can't do this one, but we'll do that one and that one. And instead of that, we can't do that, but we'll take the principle of that and we'll do this other, right? Okay, so what we're seeing there is that for the no project scenario, we've got nearly 8,000 serious injuries and 344 fatalities in the next 20 years in these areas. What the big design houses, and these were the multinational design houses really producing these, brought those numbers down to 6,700 and 286 fatalities in the next 20 years in these areas. The high safe system alignment brings it down to 3,890 serious injuries, 167 fatalities. And what they ended up adopting and going forward with was 5,298 serious injuries and 227 fatalities over a 20-year period. Okay, interesting. So this tells me quite a story, and I'll take you through it. The first thing is that most of the designs coming off the production line, big design houses, improves road safety. And that's good. Now, every one of these original, no, sorry, I lie. Not everyone. I think 32 of them, 32 of the 35 had a feasibility road safety audit undertaken on. So that was part of that original design process. So an independent set of eyes that had a look at it and make comments. So we're getting improvement in road safety. So The next interesting one, I suppose, is this difference here, isn't it? That's what we could do. That's what we could get from that original design. We can improve it by that much. If we're taking on all of these high safe system aligned recommendations that the safe system assessment team are suggesting. The next one of interest to me is, I suppose, this difference. Okay, now we go back up. Things get worse. Now, that is the project team looking through and trying to do all of these things, but coming across real world challenges, and it could be political acceptance, their opinion that this won't be accepted by the public or politically, the cost of it, we don't have, that's not in our budget, we just can't do it. It could be, that treatment we believe has other risks. Could be that we've got a cultural heritage issue, we can't do anything in that area. That's, there's just no getting around that. All of these sort of factors could come into play. The safe system assessment team is not across the details of some of those issues. It also just has a road safety, minimize death and serious injury focus. That's what we're trying to do. So that's that one. The next thing I find interesting, I suppose, is this. That difference is just why we do safe system assessments. That's the same project team, the same constraints and everything like that, but we see that improvement by just going through a process of safe system assessment, just the way you're doing on your small little intersection, but this is done on a big scale, and ideas push forward, questioning. Remember that this has had a road safety audit done on it, so this is giving us more value. So that's pretty exciting. Another thing that really stands out to me, well, there's lots of things that stand out to me, but what stands out to me in this assessment was this. I was like, well, hang on. When this came back, I was like, geez, we're about vision 0, achieving no death or serious injury. And these safe system assessments, we're doing the best. People are putting down the best sort of things we can possibly think of. And we go, well, why are we still getting this? Like, I thought that that'd be nearly 0. And when you dig into the evaluation and the how it's all set up in the prediction model, you go, well, it's actually a very, I suppose, realistic prediction model in that sense, in that you look at what's left. What's left? We call this the residual often. That's what we call it. What's left are things that we don't have answers for at the moment, or things that the infrastructure simply can't cater for at this stage. So what we see is motorcyclists, highly represented in that. We see extreme driver behavior, very heavily sort of in that. We see sort of some likely anomalies in there, sort of freak rare events, but those other two are fairly big ones. The sort of freak rare events are things like pedestrians walking along the bypass of the town. It's 100 kilometers an hour or so, and incidents like that where it's you've restricted pedestrian access. Not that, but for some reason that's that sort of stuff's happening. So So, but they're a very small part of this. It's motorcyclists, it's extreme driver behaviour really dominating this. And we might think, well, we include other behavioural elements in safe system assessment, ideas around behaviour change, enforcement, and these sorts of things. And that's true, but in order for those to affect, so we're doing that at a project level. We need bigger national, whole of statewide initiatives to roll through. Providing enforcement bays within a project helps, but it's not, it's not going to eliminate that. So it's all recognizing a lot of that. So what I say around this is that other elements of the system have to play a big part, and we have to innovate. We have to look at the residual and say, well, how do we fix? How do we do this? Okay, how do we look at motorcyclists in a new light and say, this is a legitimate road user, and there does not appear to be any indication of eliminating that as a road user. So how do we create an environment where they're not the dominant source of death and serious injury in 20 years' time? Because we've been able to, virtually eliminate the vehicle ones. So what do we need to change? How do we need to alter our system? What new ways do we need to design infrastructure, create new products, or the like? Or what restrictions do we need to place, or how do we do that? So it's quite an interesting topic. It's a lot of the road safety strategizing these days is to understand what your residual is, because this is essentially, well, at least there to there is business as usual. I mean, as long as you're doing safe system assessments and giving, providing enough funding, we'll get there. That's just going to happen. And you might squabble over exactly where the money should go to get the quickest gain and those sort of things, but that's that. The drop from here down to here is culture, is getting more funding, getting community on board and political acceptance, educating designers, project managers on new ways things can happen, and changing standards and guidelines, all of those sorts of things. Yeah, and so that's often part of road safety strategizing, and then this one's a big part of it as well, because we just don't know how to do this. So we need innovators, we need researchers, we need changes to a whole lot of things, and we need big holistic system-wide changes, Australian design rules, fostering innovation around vehicles, a whole lot of stuff. Because this 20-year prediction took into account a lot of the vehicle features that would be coming in play over the next 20 years, the growth in traffic, and a whole lot of different things. It gets a little bit murky, but okay. Do we have a question there?
We do, Ken. Sounds like we're in for the long game. The serious injury is still 5,298 as opposed to the target with the high safe system alignment of 3,890. Can this be accepted under freedom of information principle?
Yeah, so it's a good point. I mean, it's a published evaluation. So myself, Wayne Moon, and Blair Turner presented this. Wayne Moon from the Department of Transport in Victoria was the initiator of the project. We provided a lot of the data, and Blair Turner at ARB at the time led the evaluation, and so it was presented as public. And so, yeah, certainly as under a freedom of information, that all could be discovered. And yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of things out there that people started to scrutinize and look at. sort of scratch your head. But yeah, no, that's right. There's choices have been made that will end up costing people's lives and creating serious injuries. But each of those, the project team will have a justification for. It'll be, whatever it is, cost. They'll say, well, yeah, we love the idea, but we've got a budget and that's the best we can do. And the courts will accept that. They'll say, okay, well, there aren't unlimited funds. So that's what you've shown a process of doing the best you can with the funds available and carry on. It's too high level to really ever play out in a specific case. Yeah, good question, though. Thank you. Okay. Well, I think that hopefully that's interesting. Why did I spend time talking to you about that? Because you will get asked as a safe system assessor, why would we do, like, why are we doing this? Why are we adding another process? Why are we adding more red tape to these projects? There's, so many things we've got to do. Is this adding any value? And the answer is yes, it adds value above and beyond what the extremely good designers produce. Experienced, excellent designers are producing. It adds value above and beyond that. It adds value above and beyond the road safety audit process. The road safety audit process is coming more and more into line with this sort of thinking, but still, there's a difference in that. So, yeah, you can just show its value. And so just a few dot points on the benefits of safe system assessments. It's a great way of determining how well a project aligns with safe system principles. And that's that thing we've been craving as an industry for a long time, because people talk safe, we're all about safe system. And then they just continue on with their usual practices. And so how do you actually score that and quantify it? Now you have a tool that you can do that. Great way to compare design options. So we've had this issue often in road safety forever really, where these projects, bigger projects, they come to this sort of multi-criteria assessment point, and you sort of get this really clear-cut quantitative way to add in a lot of metrics, impact on congestion, project cost, bits and pieces. The safety one had been murky. It had either been sort of just an opinion, based thing, or they've done road safety audits on it, and it seems they all have addressed issues and they all get a sort of tick. Like, it never had that clear quantitative way of putting this into those multi-criteria assessments, but this is a great way to do that. So now we can add that in. Information on design changes that will move things closer to safe system objectives of eliminating death and serious injury. So it's not going to completely get us there, but it does do a better job of getting us closer to those objectives. Good way to assist planners and designers, moving that safe system from theory to practice. That's key, isn't it? It's our basis for future planning, design of infrastructure. So it's pretty good. Like, generally, it's, that information that I'm telling you there, plus the evaluation, is really why we see Queensland mandating safe system assessments across all infrastructure projects. We see Victoria doing the same on certain scale of project. We're seeing South Australia doing a lot of that. New Zealand under different programs requiring it. New South Wales, a little bit ad hoc in when it's sort of happening, but it's certainly happening on large projects and being encouraged. So really starting to get a lot of traction. We see Northern Territory, it's a standard clause in different larger infrastructure contracts in the planning phase. So yeah, it's good.
Ken, quick question,
Yeah.
please. Do you think one day the road safety audit and safe system assessment will be in the same document?
Maybe. It's a good question, because at the moment there is significant overlap, but they do different things to a degree. I suppose this next slide might sort of help where we sort of see it. The safe system assessment we found is the better assessment methodology at the concept, draft, early, feasibility stage. And the road safety audits seem to work better in the detailed design end, when they're, you've moved it along. And certainly for the temporary traffic management, checking and looking at, okay, how's that all going to play out? And the post-opening road safety audits and the like. And the reason for this is that the safe system assessment, by its nature, and you'll find this out, or if you haven't already in the ones that you're sort of doing, is that you should be recommending things that fundamentally change the scope of the project if we can get better at safe system alignment out of that. So you'll be looking, genuinely at intersection form. They're suggesting traffic, or the design is for traffic signals in these 80km/h crossroads, and your safe system assessment would be recommending, well, maybe you need to keep the roundabout and signalize it. Maybe you need to raise the whole intersection. Maybe you need to, change it to, these are big project changes. And if you've got a detailed design and you make those suggestions, they just don't happen. They don't, like, no matter what, they will rather destroy all evidence of this safe system assessment than change their 500 pages of detailed design, because the project's, it's decided, and now we're tweaking around with specifics. We're tweaking around with, okay, is the flare rate of that barrier, within the flare rate tolerances? Is the overlap of the barrier correct? Is that terminal still, is that a MASH terminal? Is it, okay, what's the drainage? What's the super elevation twist? I mean, these aren't fundamental changes to the project. These are, very important specifics and details of a project. So what we see, and Victoria sort of moved this along, is that if you do a safe system assessment at that early concept stage, we see that you don't need to do a road safety audit at that same stage. So it's essentially replacing the road safety audit at that early stage. Yeah, I think that sort of helps. But we do see, so I worked on the update of the Austroads Guide to Road Safety Part 6 Road Safety Audit for the 2022 version. And in that, we've integrated more safe system assessment thinking into the road safety audit process, but it still doesn't produce you the ability to look at different options and score the different options. It doesn't give you those other qualitative questions outside of that. So there's different things that you're not quite getting. Would it be possible to do this sort of hybrid thing? Well, I kind of think the safe system assessment at these early stages is essentially that. I just think that in a road safety audit, you're told the job isn't to redesign the project. Your job is to identify risks associated with what they're going to build. But I would say that a safe system assessment is the opportunity to redesign the project. not like physically get in your CAD and redesign their project, but you know, change and question the actual fundamentals of the project, which isn't really what a road safety audit is about. And if we look then and compare the two, and we'll show the other fact sheet that we've done on this, because it's brings up quite a number of interesting points. Both methodologies do a good job of it identifying likelihood of crash. And severity of crash is really well looked at in safe system assessments, and sometimes well looked at in road safety audits, which, as I say down here, it should be better in the 2022 version, but it takes us a while for that to roll out and filter into industry and people start using it and all of that. But we do, and we just continue to see a lot of road safety audits coming in which have just complete focus on the chance of a crash happening, and really ignoring the fact that even if you get all of that right, crashes will still happen. And how bad are those? Exposure as its own entity is really just not looked at in road safety audits. It's embedded in likelihood, and they're intertwined, but it's that distinct element. They're both providing recommendations to improve road safety. I would say that more often than not, the audit ones are tweaks, and the assessment ones can often be meatier, bigger changes, but they do both improve road safety, and they consider all road users, which is great. The safe system assessment has that focus just on the fatal and serious injury crashes, and the road safety audit will delve into the more lower injury or property damage risk as well. And that can be a significant advantage. You don't want to build a project that then ends up just having lots of minor bingles as a result of the project you've built. I mean, you'll have to get in there and rip it out very quickly because the community will go berserk. So you get a better like assessment of that with a road safety audit. Yeah, then there's these other elements, the vehicles, the people, the maintenance, post-crash care, in all of these qualitative questions that are asked around that in a full safe system assessment. You get sometimes auditors are good at picking up some of that, but they're not forced to distinctly consider these questions the same way that they are in a safe system assessment. Yeah, I talked about redesigning the project, and innovation is a big one to me. Unfortunately, I feel that road safety audit has hampered innovation in the road infrastructure space. I think it's done a wonderful job in reducing crashes that could have happened, but I think it also has seriously hampered innovation. The reason for that is that a road safety auditor, their job is to identify the risks that will be created by this new infrastructure when it's built. There is no requirement, and road safety auditors do not report on the road safety value of that infrastructure. So if you've got, I don't know, take a raised intersection on a high-speed road. I'm going to use a signalised intersection example. 80 km/h crossroads, multiple lanes of traffic. If somebody proposes a raised platform intersection, the road safety auditor will, and the audit will inevitably talk about truck rollover, rear end crashes, drainage problems, potentially noise, even though it's not a road safety issue, but I've seen that in road safety audits where they make lots of commentary around noise and just what it is to note. So it's not saying it's a risk. Loss of control crashes as a result of these things, motorcyclists, buses, you know. And the thing is that it's never put into the audit that this will reduce death and serious injury compared to the signalised intersection by about, or at least another 30%, if not 40%. We know that, right? Okay, so, but all the receiver of that report is going to just go, oh my God, okay, this is a super high risk thing to be doing. I'm not saying that we should ignore any of that. I think they're important to work through, and you need to do the, address each of those correctly. But see, a safe system assessment will identify the value of that infrastructure by showing the difference in score. You will get this lower score. So you'll immediately be able to say, this is a good thing to do. Now let's look at the details of any risks that remain or have slightly appeared as a result of this, and try to address those. But you show that benefit. Hope that makes sense. The other thing in here is that a safe system assessment can be done at a program level or it's so scalable. You could do a safe system assessment of a whole community, like a remote community, a mine site, a program, as I say, like a whole maintenance program, or the like, very scalable. Okay, Kathy, before I jump onto this, any questions? I'm just gonna have a sip of water.
It does sound like you need a drink of water there, Ken. There's no questions at the moment. Did you want me to show that comparison sheet in the meantime? Just nod. Yeah, great. Thank you. Very good. Okay. Okay, so I have popped this into the learning management system, but this was just something that our team recently put together, because this is a very common question about what to do, when and how, and all those sorts of things. So what is our scale here? Green is if it's applicable, yellow if it's somewhat or sometimes applicable, and red is not applicable. So yeah, hopefully that will be of use to people as they go out and work out what to do when.
So thanks, Kathy. You can see there that there's road safety audit, safe system assessment, and then also IRAP/OSRAP. And realize I haven't got any prize opportunities yet. So first person to tell me what IRAP or OSRAP stands for in the chat can have a prize.
In the road safety space, Ken?
Yeah, good point. Good point, Kathy. I think there is an IRAP, isn't there? The internet something protocol, something. Well, I think Chris is on it.
Chris is on it. Yes, Chris was in first. International Road Assessment Program.
Yeah, and Declan was very close second. I'll let you decide, Kathy, whether to give out two prizes. So it's the International Road Assessment Program or the Australian Road Assessment Program, and the methodology is exactly the same. But what that is the way that you can give a star rating to a road or a project, just the same way that you see star ratings on your fridge or your washing machine for energy efficiency. Well, it can be done with this methodology for roads, and so we do star ratings of roads, and provide that facility. It's a really wonderful communication tool for politicians and the like, and also to show people the magnitude of change or not change. I mean, I'll often do it when it gets down to something where that you've got a fundamental issue with an intersection or something like that, and like, what's a good example? I don't know. They do, okay, we're going to add mast arms. That'll solve the solve the issue. And you're like, oh, okay, let me run that through OSRAP. Okay, so it's a 1-star intersection. And if you do that, it stays as a 1-star intersection. Like that, what you're adding there is a little bit of improved safety. I'm not saying don't do it, but you really got to look at what is the inherent issue in that. Anyway, I think that fact sheet's going to be helpful to people, especially when you're, developing a project and you're working with a client and they say, oh, what should we do? Road safety order, or this, I've heard this OSRAP assessment, or do we do a safe system assessment? Well, they might ask, oh, do we do a XCMX model or an ANRAM or a net risk assessment, or there's methodologies coming out people's ears at the moment, but those 3 that we put there are the 3 most established, most recognized, and most done. There are ones that are slightly outside just the road infrastructure safety for the traveling public space, which is things like safety and design, DDA compliance checks and those sort of things. But just in terms of, what can we expect in terms of the number of our community killed and seriously injured after you build this? These are your 3. So, and feel free to share that with others. Share that, to explain to others what the difference is, to your boss if you're trying to work out what are you going to do on this project? Are we going to do all 3 of those? Are we just going to do one of them? And yeah. Okay. Let's get back into it. So this process I'm going to just lay out is sort of how a safe system assessment works. Once, there's a new, I'm just trying to think of, okay. There's a new road upgrade plan for a 5-kilometre section of outer suburban arterial. And so how do we go through a process then? Well, somebody needs to determine, is a safe system assessment going to be done? And if so, is it going to be a full or a rapid safe system assessment? And I will, in the next couple of slides, talk you through the difference between those full and those rapid safe system assessments. But somebody's got to make that decision. And that is essentially, I'll call them the client. It's the project sponsor. It's whoever's making those decisions around the process associated with the development of this infrastructure. Then the team is selected. And so the client is going to say, well, or the designer or whoever is going to say, all right, well, who can do this safe system assessment? Who's out there that knows this process, that knows how to do it, that can add value to it? And then they will select a team, a consultancy maybe, or somebody else that can do this assessment for them. Then there's usually some sort of a commencement meeting, some sort of meeting where there is discussion and understanding around the scope of the works to be undertaken in terms of the assessment, scope of the project that's going to be built, the background. Remember those questions that we talked about last module around getting context of the project. What are you doing? What are you trying to achieve? What, have you made any commitments? What's the land use? What's the growth? All of these sort of things. It's often can be done in a workshop, in a commencement meeting, everybody getting together and having this discussion. Then the safe system assessment team goes off and looks at the site and gets out there, and nothing will be built at this stage. It's just the existing road. It's that what's there at the moment. What are the issues? What's the volume? What are the challenges? And then complete that safe system assessment matrix. Score it all out just as you're doing. Then consider other elements of the SAFE system in those qualitative questions. Identify treatments to improve alignment with SAFE system principles. I should have said back here that you're going to do that for every single design option that they put forward, plus the existing conditions. You write it up and you report it all in a standard format, and you've got the template and they're available publicly. And then it's handed over with these ideas, suggested changes, treatments for them to consider, and they need to make decisions on those. They don't necessarily give it back to the Safe System Assessment team. It's it's like a road safety audit in that sense, handed over to the client, and it's not the Safe System Assessment team's job to follow up the client. Are you going to do that? Are you not? Checking all those sort of things. It's over to them. It's an advice. It's a piece of advice. It's a report advising. But those changes really need to be made if they've accepted them. Now, sometimes the client will then hand it back down to here and say, can you do another matrix and another scoring on our final agreed design so we can see the benefit? I kind of like that because you get this pretty cool graph usually, which goes like, here was our original design score. Oh, well, no. Okay. Here's the existing conditions, maybe. Here was our original design, and after we've done the Safe System Assessment, it's down to here, right? And that's a pretty wonderful thing to show the project review committee or any, project director or the like, to say, hey, we've all committed to this idea of the safe system. It's part of our strategy and philosophy, and we've really pushed hard to do absolutely everything we can that has been suggested. And look at the improvements that we've managed to make here, and practically we can't get it any lower than that. But we really pushed hard, and we've got the best advice in on that. We need to amend that design and the like, and make sure it happens. So that's the process. And some of you are probably going, I'm pretty comfortable with that process because it looks pretty much like what a road safety audit process is like in an infrastructure project. And it is. It's very much follows that same line. And that was intentional in order to slot it in so people could be comfortable and potentially replace the road safety audit at that early stage with this process. Okay, so there's a few things I just want to point you at, and it's around, I suppose, that point I made there about selecting the team. So Victoria has a page, Safe System Engineering, on the VicRoads website. Still VicRoads, although they're the Department of Transport, it's still the VicRoads website, but and that's where you can find the Victorian guidelines and the templates for different things. But also a bit further down that page, you find this register of recommended safe system assessors. And there's a process that they lay out here of how this list is going to grow, and more people in, and more assessors out there, and the like. And it says, anybody who's interested can get in contact with the Safe System Engineering team, and they can talk them through this pathway and the like. But you're already well into that. They then point out this specific course that you're doing, or any equivalent, but you're doing the one that's listed in there. And then you have to gain first-hand experience and do a real safe system assessment. So the one you're doing that we've given you as a training exercise doesn't qualify for this because you don't have a real client. You don't have the ability to do that workshop, to gather that background information, to really delve into that context. What we need proof of for this part is that you actually understand the process and you've got the fundamentals. So you need to go out and sort of do one, and yeah, off you go and do it. And then you hand it in and you submit it. You actually submit the whole thing and somebody will review it. And they'll say, yep, this person knows what they're doing. You're on the list. Or here's some feedback and you can have another go at that, or maybe do another one. But yeah, so then they make that decision. And I'm actually quite impressed with what they're doing in that. They are not just sort of giving everybody onto the list. They give feedback and then people update it, improve it, learn from that, and then they submit it again. And most people, either on the first or the second attempt, are getting onto that list. And then the list is just a PDF that they keep there, and it just looks sort of like that. And it's a growing list. It's not huge, but it's certainly not all Victorians either. We've got people from across the country on this list now, and I think even some New Zealanders are sneaking onto the list. So it's good. And we want to build this. We want an army of people on this list. So it's just easy to get safe system assessments done as part of projects. The South Australians have also produced a list. They call it the list of pre-qualified safe system assessors. This one is a lot easier to get onto. So this one literally says, in order to obtain pre-qualification, applicants must complete an appropriate safe system assessment course. Upon completion of this course, you send your certificate and your details in to Natasha there, and hey presto, you'll be put on the list. Well, not hey presto. Next time they decide to update the list and republish the list, you will go onto it. And currently, I think this is the only course that they have as the appropriate safe system assessment course. I'm not 100% sure of that, but that is everybody that's on that list has done our course. So, and again, that one's building, and we want to see it continue to build. So, get yourself onto these lists, add it as a qualification, put it on your CV, and let people know that you're a pre-qualified or accredited or I don't know, actually, I'm just going to say a recommended safe system assessor by the Victorian government, or a pre-qualified by the South Australian government. And they're the only two jurisdictions that have registers. Queensland puts clearly in the road safety policy for TMR the requirement for safe system assessments to be done on all infrastructure projects, which is pretty exciting. But they don't have a register of safe system assessors. There was discussion, and there probably still is going on discussion within Queensland as to whether or not to add a column to the road safety auditor register, just to also have a tick next to the ones that have completed safe system assessment course and have successfully shown their competency in safe system assessing. But we'll wait and see if that comes along. I've got a few more things to talk about before I jump into the general stuff, but it might be an appropriate time to take a little stretch break. Kathy, is there anything I need to deal with before we maybe have that break?
No, it's a good idea. Thanks, Ken.
All right, let's take 5 minutes now. And then when we come back, as I say, I've probably got another 20 minutes, 25 minutes of stuff to cover, and then hopefully give you a fair bit of time to finish quizzes off and move your final safe system assessment along. So see you in 5. Record. Oh, no. There it goes. Okay, back into it. So, yeah, Queensland's ticking along nicely there. So, I'll just briefly show you a couple of things. So, Queensland had said on all infrastructure projects, safe system assessments should be done. Victoria went with this sort of model of, okay, well, let's work it out by infrastructure investment size. and the current policy says less than $2 million. A rapid safe system assessment can be done where it's determined that a formal assessment is required, and there's not really any specifics around how to make that assessment, but there's this sort of general requirement. You've got to show that you're aligning with safe system principles. But maybe if you've got a maintenance job or something that you've been able to sort of justify that this assessment methodology is not going to add value, then it sits within that. But if it's between $2 and $5 million, a full safe system assessment for any complex projects or any with significant risk of fatal serious injury. So, anything in high speed environments is probably a pretty good way to think of that. And a rapid safe system assessment for any of the lower risk projects or any repeat assessments that are being undertaken. And above $5 million in total estimated cost of project, full safe system assessment for all projects. And only a rapid if it's a repeat assessment of one that's already happened. So what are these rapid and full? Now, the Queenslanders will call a rapid a light assessment. So the differences are here, and they're not like staggeringly different. They're still fairly much the same. It's just a few things stripped off the full one in the rapid. So let me just go through the full one, and I'll maybe note the ones that you don't necessarily need to do as part of a rapid. So commencement meeting, that's one where, rapid, you don't really need to have a meeting or something around that. Project background and context, well, you're going to need that regardless. The workshop, well, it's kind of even optional in both full and rapid, but it's often done in a full one, some sort of workshopping with the project team. Site inspection is an optional in a rapid, although it's done a lot, but it's not. It has to be done in a full safe system assessment. Existing conditions and design options using the matrix is in both. That has to be done. Consider other elements, other pillars of the safe system. So that's one that's only done in a full. That doesn't appear in a rapid. Identification of design changes to improve alignment with safe system. So you're going to do that in both. The reporting is a little bit lighter. The reporting is lighter in the rapid. And then the project team, still considers changing things. If you want rescoring, you do that. And of course, you amend the project scope accordingly. So any questions there on the safe system assessment process, policies, accreditation, registration, pre-qualification, anything around any of that?
Nothing at the minute, Ken. Good opportunity to type in any questions if you have them now, or if anyone's popped out and done their site visit. Or maybe everyone just wants to get cracking and use this extra time for doing their report.
Yeah. Okay, well, we're nearly there. I've just got a few last things to cover, which I want to just talk about these different, I suppose, road environments and what aligns well or doesn't align well with safe system principles. From residential environments, shopping strips, mixed-use arterials, low, high volume, rural roads, outer suburban roads, freeways, and highways and the like. And as I mentioned at the start here, the reason I want to do this is because you will be asked to undertake safe system assessments on a variety of things, hopefully, and you'll be out there doing it. So just you you're going to prove to us that you understand the process of a safe system assessment from your assignment, and that you've had a good think about safe system alignment in the context of whatever it is that you were given as a site. But there's very different road environments out there, and the same process applies, and there's slightly different specifics. Now, throughout the course, we've been delving and dipping into these different ones, but I thought just a little bit of show a picture and let's have a quick chat about things that could be changed to improve alignment with safe system principles. So essentially, I mean, you're going to score it the way you score it, then you're going to come up with some recommendations. And we did a little bit of this with those cartoon or artistic impression ones in an earlier module. But here we go. We've got a 50km/h residential area, accesses onto a more major road down here. How about we just do that little exercise? You just type in there things that you would change to get better safe system alignment, and put in there exposure, likelihood, or severity. So are you going to influence exposure or likelihood or severity? Okay. I'll give you a couple of minutes to just do that, and things that you might change here. All right, seeing some good ideas already coming in. Well done. We're seeing pretty good categorization as well. Yeah, so we're seeing people talking about traffic calming, local area traffic management, and so slowing vehicles down, influencing the severity of crashes. Yes, also will influence the likelihood of crashes and reduce that as well. So anything we know we're getting lower speeds, we reduce the chance of the crash, the likelihood, and the severity of the crash. So really great gains there. There's been comment in there around the sight distance issues with parking, which is a likelihood issue. So that's correctly categorized. And so removal of parking will alter the likelihood of crashes, absolutely, open up sight lines and the like. Always just be wary about the increase in speed that can cause through vehicles. So complement that always with measures to keep the road width narrow or local area traffic management. But yes, that's a likelihood reducer. Yeah, so potentially some crossing points and wombat crossings and the like are good ideas in indented parking, tram ramps, cushions, and things to slow vehicles down. So everybody's thinking in a really nice manner there. But certainly speeds can really be brought down in these areas because they're not through routes, they're not traffic priority routes, and we know our safe system tolerable speeds are, operating speeds 30 at absolute sort of maximums, but well down into the 20s is good. I mean, I think nobody quite mentioned it, but I would have liked to see people wanting to close off this access to this road if it's appropriate. We have an amazingly open access philosophy in Australia, where you can rat run so many places, and that rat running means that people are using this as a movement corridor to go through, and that's not what it is. So we should be trying to work out ways to block that, and that would influence the exposure. Good stuff. I'll give a prize to the person who can tell me where this is. Interesting. Question. But we won't do the same exercise on this one. I'll just run through. Robert's got it. Oh, Gary is just in behind there. Actually, I think it actually says it there. There you go, Bondi Junction. Yeah, it is on the side. Okay, now this area again. I mean, these are your classic areas of. It's a high place value. It's a place for people. There's a lot of trading, congregation of people, bars, drinking, coffee, everything going on. Yet it's sort of evolved around movement corridors, and they're still trying to retain this movement corridor. And as a result of that, the pedestrian death and serious injuries in these areas is very high. So we really need to recognise that and really seriously question why we're trying to put vehicles through here at speed. And by at speed, I mean like 40 kilometres an hour. That's at speed in these areas. And yeah, it just doesn't make sense. And the people killed and seriously injured are proof that this doesn't make sense. And so these areas, you wouldn't be looking to restrict pedestrians and corral them to particular crossing points. You would enhance the freedom of crossing by making it so slow for vehicles going through that area that they, it's extremely slow. So that would be the ideal, but certainly, you could do. I suppose you could kind of do that with really big pedestrian wombat crossings, big ones, really big. So the bulk of the road is just pedestrian crossing facilities and those sort of things, or just try and make the whole area a shared zone. And certainly we wouldn't want to be putting fencing up like that. That would just end up in people getting stuck on the wrong side of the fence and those sort of things. So the slowing of the speed to reduce the likelihood and severity of crashes is key. There's lots of other bits and pieces. These mixed-use arterials are a challenge, as we looked at in those artistic impressions, where we have, it seems to be a high place value, high movement corridor. When you look at your road use hierarchy, okay, it's traffic priority, pedestrian priority, bus priority, cycle, strategic cycling corridor. Like we're trying to do absolutely everything with this bit of road. And as a result, it's very challenging for us to make decisions. But when you get to those, those types of roads which are trying to do everything, this one sort of one of Sydney's classic examples of a road that's trying to do everything for everybody, and each city has got their road that they can go, it's just trying to do everything. In the end, with those, you're going to reduce the vehicle speed. It's the inevitable thing to have to do, because if people are not willing to compromise that place value of it and say, okay, well, traffic. If you could get somebody to say, no, this is a traffic priority route, and that is the number one, then you go, okay, all right, let's get some fencing going, and let's really restrict movement across this area and the like. But they don't like to do that. So you end up with these situations. But what you end up understanding from a safe system alignment perspective is that we can slow vehicles through here. They can still get through at reasonable rates. It really doesn't actually impact on congestion because there's a lot of other things out here that are far more influential, like just the traffic lights and those sorts of things. You raise some of these traffic pedestrian crossings to slow down that fast straight run, where at 2 a.m. somebody could be certainly putting the foot down and going through there fast. And also that's the time where we're seeing all intoxicated pedestrians and things out there. You might think, oh, well, what about the buses? They're not going to fare well on that. Well, maybe you could do a configuration where the bus doesn't have the raised area, but it gets raised across there. Lots of ways to innovate, but the idea is to slow down those vehicles from that, reduce the likelihood and severity of crashes. Another really nice tweak likelihood one that I like a lot is a dwell on red / rest on red scenario, or rest on red scenario, which is just on Friday night and Saturday night, from whatever you decide, maybe 7 at night till 3 a.m, or maybe 8 at night till 3 a.m. You just default your traffic lights to red as opposed to defaulting them to green. So the signals will look like that as a vehicle approaches them when there's no other vehicles around. So you're slowing down and stopping. And then when the vehicle gets to the light, it goes green and they go through, and then it pulls back to red, which is the flip to what it would usually do. And the reason for that is you've identified that you're at that time of the day, pushing vehicles through there is not a priority, and we know we're going to have higher risk pedestrians utilizing the area, and we can reduce the chance that they're killed by this. It also will slow vehicles down, so less severity of incident in some situations as well. But that's a nice little tweak in these sorts of areas. Cycle facilities and pedestrian facilities where you can as well, reducing likelihood of crash. The low volume rural roads are going to be highly problematic for us, because the infrastructure investment needed to maintain high speeds on these roads in alignment with safe system principles, as in to get our environment able to withstand the forces associated with crashes, would involve continuous barrier systems through these areas on the side and down the middle of the road. And the hundreds of thousands of kilometres of road we have out there that would require that, the investment is beyond what we'll possibly be able to handle. So when you're safe system assessing these sorts of road environment, it becomes problematic. And what I'll often do is, because I understand the limitations through the project, discussion and context and everything like that, and they'll often say, well, yes, we've got 50 kilometres of road here, and it looks like this, and we want to do safety upgrades, and we want you to do a safe system assessment to help inform those upgrades, or something like that. And you talk to them, and in your mind you go, well, the best safe system alignment to keep high speeds will be outer barrier and center barrier. And oh yeah, okay, so we're probably in a $100 million project at least, with all of the different works required for that. And it's just, that they wouldn't get 100 million for the whole program for this, likely across all of the roads in all of the state, often for these sorts of things. So to do to suggest that in a safe system assessment, what I'd often do instead is sort of do a little preamble paragraph into the recommendations to talk about that theory and why it's not getting recommended. Because you inevitably end up in these scenarios where you're talking about a lot of likelihood factors, so a lot of supporting treatments rather than primary treatments, where you're talking about the things we know reduce the chance of crashes, but they don't address the energy and they don't virtually eliminate. So ceiling shoulders, tactile edge line, tactile center line, wide center lines, enhanced delineation, so guideposts, enhanced line marking, brighter line marking, and then isolated barrier at highest risk locations, which is a severity reduction factor, but you're not doing it throughout and those sort of things. Then I often, in fact, these sorts of environments, you're talking about speed limit reductions as well. Now, as a safe system assessor, you put that in, it's going to be problematic for the road authority. Speed limit changes on these sorts of roads are highly politicized, and community get really heavily invested and involved in it. But the reality is that we can't afford to do the investment to keep the speeds high. We're going to have to reduce the speeds on these roads, invest the money in the major network so the speeds can maintain high on that, and hopefully encourage people to use the major networks rather than the more higher risk ones. That's the theory of it. It's super hard to play out when you're a regional engineer and you're out there managing this and getting all involved in it, but that's the theory. And to a degree, as a safe system assessor, you have a bit of a luxury of sort of putting it out there. And in theory, you're right. The practical application is pretty hard, but at least your report's providing some extra evidence of what people are, what professionals are suggesting from these areas. A couple more, and then I'll wrap up. Yeah.
Question. A particular traffic signal team doesn't support priority red phasing. Do they lack innovation?
Yeah. So yes, I've faced that many times. So the dwell on red that I was sort of talking about, that's you remember I whipped out that memo that said, who's going to sign off killing and seriously injuring people? I mean, we could dust that off and use it again, because that is an absolute direct decision that will cost lives, and really, in a lot of scenarios, has minor benefit in terms of traffic operations at a time that there is stuff all to no strategic importance of that route from a traffic flow perspective. Don't get me wrong, I'm not suggesting it on like the Princess Highway or something like that, with these major freight routes and all this freight running through there at night and those sort of things. Well, no, that's they're bigger. It's those areas like it's just absolute no-brainers out there. They're like towns that have got a town bypass, and there's a set of signalized intersection. It's got like a pub on one corner, the nightclub on the other, the KFC and a souvlaki place on the other corners. And you go there at 11 at night on a Friday, and it's just, intoxicated pedestrian chaos. So why are we prioritizing high-speed vehicle movement through there? Like, it doesn't make any sense. If it's important freight and everything like that, they're using the bypass. So but the traffic ops people will show a slight, it's slightly going to impact on the through movement of vehicles at 11 at night on a Friday night, which is ludicrous. But anyway, yeah. Okay. Good question though. Thank you. So these higher volume rural roads, and it doesn't look high volume, but it is. Trust me, you can't take a photo of the road when it's like this. But anyway, so these are the ones where the investment will happen and the speeds will stay high, and we will see the continuous barrier systems rolled out on the side and down the middle, and we'll see intersections being improved. Roundabouts are going to be great in this location, maybe compact roundabouts, so we don't have to spend as much money. But these can be really good if you have a centre barrier system and you have access points to, people can access, come down and U-turn around and go back. because if you're putting central barrier systems down the middle of the road, you can't do that right turn out. You don't need to create as many gaps if you've got roundabouts strategically placed through your corridors. And high volume outer arterials, well, these are really, if they are traffic priority routes, which often they are, and that's what they are from a strategic planning perspective, we really need to think of them like that. The bicycle facilities, we have to provide fully separated bike facilities. We can't operate these at the 70 and 80 kilometre per hour. That is, you know, what people are looking for on these traffic priority routes with vulnerable road users, only separated by a white line. It's going to be a physical separation. These are the areas where you can do these pedestrian fencings, corral pedestrians, particular crossing points where it's slowed down, or create your underpasses, your overpasses to try to create those sorts of environments where the vulnerable road user interaction is not there. It's not going to be a great place for people if in that congregating, trading, love being in this atmosphere type thing, but that's not the purpose of the function of that bit of road. You're also going to need to ensure that any of that conflicting area, like the signals, has speeds and angles down with intolerable levels for the different road users to address the severity of crashes. And the second last one, we've got our major urban freeways, motorways, and these operate really, I mean, they are quite highly aligned with safe system principles due to the fact you've eliminated a lot of the angle and energy crash types where you don't have right angle intersections, the interchanges and the angle of entry and the speed differential are all nicely set up, safe system aligned. You don't have head-on ability. You don't have runoff road into point source hazards. Yeah, the barriers aren't the most flexible barriers, but they're still a barrier, which is just so much better than no barrier at all. But where we see the problems associated with major urban motorways and freeways and the like is associated with flow breakdown. So when it's flowing freely, like it is in this picture, there's low crash numbers, very low crash numbers. This is wonderfully engineered. When it is absolutely saturated, it's stuffed, it's not moving, it's very low severity of crash. There's actually quite high number of little rear ends and side swipe little bingles, but it's all very, very slow. The problem is as your freeway breaks down in flow and you see that their speeds are still high, but we're getting you know, high speed rear end events and runoff road events as people try to avoid those queues and these sorts of things happening. So the answer to that is really managed motorway stuff and reduces the chance of all that happening, and you have the ability to reduce the severity. So this is where you're seeing it rolled out in most jurisdictions now, and lane use management systems, LUMs, and freeway ramp entry signals. So any entry has the signals. So you can meter the entry. So these are all controlled and have algorithms, but also have the ability to slow down because for vehicles for incidents, and the whole thing's managed. And it also works really well on another problem area, which is a bit hidden in motorways, but it's pedestrian death and serious injury. It's pretty much no cyclist death or serious injury on most motorways. Queensland a little bit different on that, but most motorways around Australia, like almost no cyclists because there's no cyclists there. But pedestrians, on the other hand, are quite an issue, and it's associated with pedestrians exiting vehicles. So broken down vehicles. Taxis late at night where People get out for all sorts of reasons, use a toilet, throw up, I don't know, running away from it. It's chaos. And so the ability to identify these situations, pre-warn vehicles, slow vehicles down to the toilet, that management of the system is where we go. They're a very sort of different safe system assessment exercise. They're really quite fun, but you get into a lot of sort of ITS systems and what can happen and how does it happen and what are the things available. And finally, the rural highways, where we certainly know continuous barrier systems, again, to enable us to have high speed without with reducing severity of crash outcome, and intersections, grade separated, eliminate the exposure to crashes or reduce the exposure to crashes. Or the only other really way to operate an at-grade intersection in these high-speed environments, well, certainly you can put a roundabout, but there's often a bit of reluctance to have roundabouts on national highways and freight routes and those sort of things, but that's a great safe system alignment. You can do it sort of if you've got a crossroad and you've got a sort of median. You block it off, but you provide this long acceleration lane. So they've got enough time to get up to speed, and so your speed differential is good, and then enough time for them to get over, and then a U-turn facility and acceleration lane back, and enough time for them to get across. So what happens then is, people coming up here wanting to go left, well, they accelerate and the speed differential is good. They want to go right, they still have to go this way, drift over, but the energy exchange is good there and the likelihood of crash is low. Come back, energy exchange is good. Slightly problematic on merge from right, but at speed and everything they can work quite well, and as long as they've got enough time to. They're obviously not in my little diagram, but you have lots of space there that they could go that way or they can continue on. So it is possible to look at the energy at each of these and try to make sure that the speed differential, the delta V, as we call it, we talked about, delta V is within tolerable levels, that the likelihood's low, and you can get really good safe system alignment from these at-grade intersections in these environments. Okay, I don't think we'll do any extra content because I think this group's chomping at the bit to get into their quiz and finish everything off. But I'll hand over to you, Kathy, now to just take them through the learning management system, finalise the course, and then I'll say some final words, if that's all right.
Absolutely. Am I on? Yes, great. Thank you. Okay, so what we have is that version. Never mind if this looks a little bit different. This is just the back end version. So you've got your safe system assessment that you need to complete. Oh, look, one person's already got it in.
Well done.
Maybe a prize goes there, but it isn't due for another 7 days and 5 hours specifically. So next Thursday, if you can get them in, then what Ken will do is grade them all, or one of the team will do so. And once that's done, you need to make sure you've done all your quizzes. So there's a module 5 quiz today. And the last thing we ask you to do is complete a very short feedback survey. So just about the course and what you think worked well and what you think we might be able to improve on. And then once you've done that, you've done all your quizzes, you've passed your assignments, and you've done the feedback, then this certificate will appear and it'll be your course certificate. So you can download that and keep a copy of that. We'll also send you your prizes and hard copy of your certificate in the post about a week or two after that. And then depending on how long it takes Australia Post to get them to you. So I think that's about it. Does anyone have any questions on what's left to do and how to do it or anything like that?
Okay. Well, while we pause and see if anybody do that, I just want to thank everybody for taking time out of their incredibly busy schedules to take this this course. I'm excited that that this group's going to get out there and start doing safe system assessments and really injecting safe system thinking into more projects and getting out there and being champions for the safe system philosophy, but also genuine application of it rather than just sort of airy-fairy talking about it. So getting in there, actually doing it. So really do promote the fact that you can assist projects in getting better at safe system alignment. We really encourage you to put your certificate online and tell people that you can do this and you've completed the course. Tag me in and Safe System Solutions in. We'll share it as well. And because it's such an important thing. I think if we can, within the investments we're going to make and the jobs we're doing, if we can reduce the number of people killed and seriously injured in the future, I mean, there's nothing more important really than that, in my opinion. So let's do it. You've got some tools now to get stuck into it. Thanks to Kathy and team for all the work behind the scenes to organise that these courses don't just magically happen. There's a lot of work that goes into it. I think there might be just to add
I think it's yes, if you do need a hand, if you do finally sit down and find some time to and write your report and you go, oh, it's not making sense to me, please get in touch. You can either give us a call, send us an email with any questions. If you'd like to book in a 30-minute session with Ken at some stage, we can do that as well. So don't feel like you're alone in the world. Please be in touch. And yes, if you need an extension, if you can't work to next Thursday, then please also get in touch and I'll update your due date.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody. Wonderful group. You're all going to be excellent safe system assessors. Of course, into the future, feel free to get in contact with me if you need some help or you're, I don't know, doing a safe system assessment on some weird thing and you want to run something by me. Always happy to chat. Also, just have a lot of projects and random things that we've looked at or I've done in different areas. So I'm always happy to flick over.
Like window washers at traffic lights, for example.
I did a safe system assessment for the ACT government on the people who wash your windscreen at traffic lights. So a colleague and I did that. There you go. The versatility of a safe system assessment. Did it for the whole of Canberra as well. So
okay,
fun times. But anyway,
yes.
Good luck with your quizzes. Get into it. Catch you later.
Thank you, Ken. Thanks for your passion. Bye, everyone.
Bye.